practice at T1A. Oksana is responsible for the global process intelligence practice at this company, which is an IT consulting company with key expertise in cloud and AI. She has over 10 years of experience in data and business intelligence, and she's focused on cultivating a data-driven culture and efficient, human-friendly processes for both the clients and within the company. She views process mining as crucial foundation for implementing manageable processes, especially when used synergetically with other tools and approaches. Process mining approach can do and should be a part of everyday toolkit for managing key business processes and making decisions, just as BI and Excel. Oksana will cover the basic ideas and principles of the technology, the cases and possible results. She will tell us what process mining is and how it could be used. Oksana, stage is yours.
Thank you. And I guess you already told most part of my talk, but that's okay. Hi everyone, nice to see you here. I'm Oksana, and yes, I'm responsible for all the process mining that we are doing as T1A globally. And I'm a fan of process mining, so the more people knows about it, the more happy I am. Does anybody know, or maybe you even use process mining in your everyday business? No? Oh, that's great. So there will be just a few more people. Okay. So, talk? Yeah. What I'm going to tell you is how we transformed from a data engineering team building data warehouses and being like this usual development teams that are not fans of any visualizations and BI, but the data folks, to process mining, and how we help our own company and how we help our other companies to implement process mining to their processes and to their culture. And it's very important to understand who we are and what we normally do when we are speaking about this story. And as T1A, we are a global consulting team focused mostly around data and AI, but we also have several dedicated practices that work on marketing automation, CRM, client lifecycle management, and one of these practices is mine, it's process intelligence, and we are focused on process improvement. We use such technologies like process mining, task mining, RPA, and BPM, and anything that is connected to the hyper-automation concepts. And we are aiming to make better processes and to help the clients adopting these new technologies, making them part of their everyday business, because it's worth it. And before I started using process mining and implementing process mining, I used to be a data engineer, then a data warehouse architect, and I've been working for IT consulting for a bit more than 10 years, and I have seen lots of processes changing. I have seen the culture of the companies changing, and the most inspiring is the change of our own company. This is an illustration of what can be called an inverse Conway's law. You might have heard about Conway's law that says that if you develop some product, some IT product, it mirrors the structure of your organization or your team. And we see, as an integrator, as a company of IT services, we see the backwards action. We can see the inverse Conway's law. We see that if the company adopts some new technology or some new IT tool, some new software, it changes not only the processes it really supports, it changes the story, the culture of the whole company. And just a few months ago, one of our lawyers came to me and said, "Hey, honey, we've analyzed our process report, and you know what? Your contracts are among top 3 the slowest. Let's check together what can be the root cause for it and what can we do with it." And I like this case. It's one of the most inspiring moments in my own career, because you know what? She brought me process mining report. She brought me the process based on the real data and said, "Hey, here are your contracts, they have been slow, here are the root causes, let's think together what we can change here." And she is not a process miner, she is not a process analyst or data analyst, she is just a lawyer who is responsible for the contracts that we are signing. And this is how I see that it changes not only our team, not only our clients, it changes our internal company as we use it. And now I guess I have to say what process mining is, because I'm saying please use process mining, it's good, it's worth it, it's not complicated, but I have to put some basement under it, yes. Process mining has this very simple workflow of implementation, and you all know it. Maybe the key difference is just this third picture. Imagine the process. It can be a business process, it can be any process, and it's really easy to imagine because you are participating dozens of processes every day. And not only on your work, I come to the airport, I have to go through check-in, I have to drop off my luggage, security check, and before the takeoff, there are lots of other steps, and there are lots of scenarios. What can change here in this process? We are coming here to the conference, we meet each other, we are calling for a taxi. These all are processes. Lots of processes are inside your business. All your business is living, and all the processes are important. Some of them are front processes that you are in touch with your customers or with your clients. Some of them are back processes, and they're also very important because it's the basement on what your company works. And good news is that most of the processes are already covered with their digital footprints. They go through a variety of IT systems, there are some event logs, so we can get the data. If we can get the data, we can analyze it. Sounds really easy, but as some of the speakers already said today and mentioned that the data can be real crap and it can be a real problem. So lucky we are to have some past of the data engineers, but since you have the data, you can load it to a tool. There are a group of tools that are built to work with the processes, with the process structure, and what they give us is a process graph, a process map, and it's automatically discovered from the data that we've loaded there. So now we have process structure, we have process behavior, we can see the KPIs, it's visualized, we can work with it, we can interact with it, so we can analyze it to get some insights and to take some actions. So it's data-driven and it's quite beautiful. I show it. And what I'm telling here is pretty much the same as any other analytics workflow. You're doing the same things when using BI, when using Excel, when using everything you use to analyze what happens inside your process, inside your everyday business. And I think the only crucial change is that you work with process logic here. When you work with raw data, you have to keep in mind that the data is somehow connected. That it's not just a line, it's an event. And for event, you have to know what happened here, what was the activity, when it happened. Sometimes we even know 2 timestamps. We know when the activity started, when it ended. And what's the most important, we might be able to connect different activities to one process case. A process case is one process entity, something that has a beginning, has its end, and what's most important, has its target or its goal. And we can say, okay, this is one process case. It's, for example, one purchase order, or one procurement request, one order that I'm doing as a customer in some online shop. And this is one case. Tomorrow I come and do one more order, and this is another case, 2 cases, and so on. So if we can work with this structure, we can recreate this process model. So we have, yes, we have specific tools that can work with this logic, that are based on this logic, and that provide us with more tools, with more functionality, helping us not to keep it in mind, not to implement it with such huge formulas, with some huge metrics, with some additional data. We just have it in front of us to work with it, to find what can be improved in this process, to understand it and to check it. How it looks like. There are some screenshots. It's from Microsoft, but currently there are, I think, more than 10 of tools already that are widely used. And this is the key element. The best part is process map. You can see the steps as the nodes on the graph. You can see the transitions between them. And maybe it's not sharp here. It's a really small process. It's a really easy one. It's from Jira. It's software development. So we have some analyst working, then developer working, maybe some Q&A testing, and it's in production. But this is filtered so to be not scary, to be readable. Usually it's huge mess. We even call it spaghetti diagram. And even there, you can see that there are some red lines that are wider than others. And you can say that, sometimes we are coming from ready for Q&A back to the development in 20 hours, like 17 hours. And we spent in this status just nothing, 0 seconds on average. That's strange. I would go deeper to understand what happens here. And I don't need to switch to Excel or to some other tool to go deeper to digest some, to understand some particular cases. I can do it all here in process mining. And I also have here all that BI tool usually gives me. All these beautiful bar charts and lines and pie charts, everything, to understand my data better, to be sure about the objectivity of the actions I take. Here's just an example of the resource utilization. It was a nice case when we simulated the changes in the process to understand what would be better for this particular team, for this particular project they work on. Should we better add 2 DevOps or 1 analyst? Should it be a data analyst for the first 2 steps, or someone who is also involved in testing or in business training? And this is also what we can do with process mining. We don't have to implement the changes to see the effects. We can simulate them. There are some models underneath the box, and they're different for different tools. But in most cases, you get the process structure as it would be and as it would work if you implement the changes. There is an effect of bottleneck shift. It's when you see the bottleneck, you understand, oh, okay, there are not enough resources here. I'll put more resources here and we'll be okay with it. But when you do it, things go better on the first stage and things go worse on the second stage. Because it was good when there was a bottleneck here, but since the flow is okay, the flow is wider on the previous steps of the process, it became a new problem that we get here. It's good to be aware of it. It's good to know what to expect when you implement the changes. And it's also what process mining helps us to do. If to come back to our story, 5 years ago, I was a data architect. I had a team of data engineers. We've been working for some data warehouse projects, and we've also tried to optimize some of our internal process because, you know, we were involved to hiring, we were involved to some contracting, some other back processes, and they're not always good. In fact, they are not always even documented. There are no process flow to be, but they take lots of our time. And at that moment of history, I've met process mining, and I wanted to try it. And I've taken the data set I knew really good. It was hiring data sets for our own hiring process. And 5 years ago, we have totally re-engineered our hiring process, and we've been rechecking, like a health check, our process with process mining tools, I would say not more than every 3 months. Sometimes it happens even more frequent, as our recruiters now use their operational dashboards. They have their dashboards, they like them, they open it when they come to their workplace and they see, oh, okay, I'm ready, I have some questions here, I'll deal with it first. And as an effect that we could measure for the first several years of using process mining as a part of our hiring process, that we became much faster. We became 72% faster on average for the whole hiring process, and we've managed to hire 30% more employees in 1 year without upscaling the team of recruiting. There are also some other effects, but my favorite one is still when they come to me with some ad hoc analysis they've done by themselves on Celonis or some other tool and say, it looks like this step is not necessary anymore. You see, it's 100% conversion, and it adds 2 days to our process. Can we just skip it? And then we skip it, They measure the effect and come back to, OK, let's just change the configuration of our systems and skip this step forever. We use it not only for our hiring processes, but we use it also with legal team, with our accountant team. And I see that it's not a rocket science for them now. It's not something wow, something unusual. They use it on an everyday basis. They even come to me and say, OK, we've checked, your contracts are the slowest. And I'm happy to hear that. Why? Why should you try process mining? Not because I like it, but I hope that you try it and you like it too. And it can really be a tool that you use on your everyday basis together with Excel or some regular BI, because it's not a rocket science. And what it gives to you is the full picture of your process, like an MRI, especially if your process comes through a variety of different systems. It's very hard to see the full picture, to see it as a seamless. And process mining helps us to see it. We can see all the departments that participate as one system. We can see all that is always covered in the gray zones between them. That is nobody responsible for, but this is still a part of our process. This is data-driven, as we like it, because it's based on the data that we have in our source systems. And actually, one of the outcomes of the first implementation of process mining is usually either we have not enough data or our data is bad. So one of the first changes that happens to the process is improving the quality of data or getting more data. We start to collect more data, we improve the granularity of this data to make this process more clear for us, to make it transparent, to make it possible to analyze and control this process. It's also scalable because, I've done lots of this process analysis manually as a team leader, as a data architect, and of course I can check logs for the 10 days, or I can check some footprints that we have for a month, but I can't do it every day. And process mining can. We just set up some regular ETL, we just configure the data to be updated on near real-time basis, and that's it. If you analyzed one department, you can scale it to analyze and to compare, to benchmark other departments to it. You can load here the history to see some seasonal trends in your process, to understand it better, to understand the root causes that you're not covering when you look at a small amount of time. So it's really scalable. It can be objective. As Casey said yesterday, we can't trust any tool because it's trained by people, so we have to understand it. But at least it's much more objective than me when I'm sitting with the timer next to the recruiting, trying to understand what are the key steps, what are the most time-consuming steps for the process. And what we most like of all this stuff is that it provides us with the opportunity to perform process analysis and to do it in a more intelligent way. Because we don't have to implement all this stuff manually, we do already have this process map. It's automatically discovered. It's full. We can compare it and to do it automatically. There are some really nice features that automatically detect root causes for the outliers. I really like to check reworks and cycles, because the step that is preceding your entrance to the cycle is something you have to change. It's 99% something that causes that cycle. That's additional time, that's additional resources, and so on. We've been talking a lot about some chats about general AI for these 2 days, 3 days, and for this whole year. And most of the platforms have already embedded the chat inside the process mining tool. You don't even need to click some filters or to build some analysis by yourself. You just load the data, you have the model, and you ask, OK, who is the bad cop here? Who is the slowest contract approver? Or maybe, what is the most time-consuming part for this particular process? Or maybe, who approves all the contracts without reading them, because it takes 50 seconds. And it can be not only cost or time or people resources that you use it. It can be also a part of analysis of your sustainability, of your ESG goals, because your carbon emission is just the same KPI, same metrics. that describe your processes. And you can also see it as a process. You can also see what steps create the most impact, what steps are the heavier in waste of the resources or in energy consumption. And now you can see it and you can work with it. What I'm trying to say here is that it's not rocket science. Most of you do already have anything you need to start doing process mining. Of course, I'm not saying about some huge projects like let's integrate some system with all our source systems and implement the whole supply chain. It's a big elephant, and I wouldn't suggest anyone to start with it. But it still can be, and it should be, at least you should give it a try, a part of your everyday toolkit. You can ask some simple questions and get the answers easy. And there are no special skills you need for it, actually, because it's some usual routine with basic ETL, basic approach for data preparation, and some ideas about the design for the dashboards. In some tools, you have to design your dashboards. Yes, some tools have your dashboards already pre-generated, so you just load the data and you see everything you need to see here for the first site. About the tools, sorry, it's very important point here about change management. I wouldn't say it's a skill, but it's very important to understand that when you analyze the process, you are ready to change it. There is no need to analyze your process if you are not changing it or if you are not interested in how it works inside. So I usually say that there are two prerequisites for process mining. One is data, another one is an interest and ability to change the process. About the tools, just a few words. As far as I remember, it's only 1 year since we have Gartner Magic Quadrant for the tools, because the sphere is a bit new for the market, for the common market. But now we have several platforms that are leaders, that are combining the process discovery functionality with process automation, business process management, some BI, and stuff like this. I would say that the major players here are Microsoft with its Power Platform, of course Celonis, you might hear about it, AB Timeline, UiPath, and several more. And there are free versions that you can try without diving into these huge platforms. I would really suggest you to try Celonis free plan. It's easy to start with. There is, of course, Disco by Fluxicon, and some more. Depending on the vendors, they have different conditions for the use. And of course, there are open source, there are Python libraries for those who like it, for those who want to create it by themselves. And you always need some data preparation, for sure. The data is never good enough to be digested just from the source. A few words about mindset. I worked with different teams. I worked with process optimization teams. I worked with lean teams and Six Sigma teams. And from the other side with audit and with the guys who are responsible for the processes that they work in. And it's really important to be a curious researcher. It's really important to look for something in the process and to be open-minded, to challenge what you see, to ask the questions to it, to ask, if it's supposed to be this way, what if I'll change it? What if the time has come to change it? Because, you know, there is always some place for improvement, and process mining is just a really easy tool to see it and to be in control of the changes. That's it. That's all I wanted to tell you today. I'll be glad to discuss your questions and cases, and I can talk about process mining a lot. But the key idea is that there is process mining. It's data-driven. It can make much easier your questions that are dedicated to your processes, and it can help you with your process optimization. I'd be happy if someone tries it, actually. Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you. It's okay.
Okay, it's not working. You mentioned your experience. It's not working. Okay. So you mentioned your experience with the airline. I'm working for one, and I would like to hear maybe some example of yours, like the real life example of a process, of your process, actually, while you're delivering your work, like how you concretely do that, like maybe some short example or something we could actually catch, because this is like in general, but I would like to hear something concrete.
Yeah,
So
okay.
small example.
Okay. One of the recent cases that we've just finished was the claim management for a public sector. It's when you're a citizen. It's perfect. So you're okay, there is graffiti, please wash it away. There is a request reason, and several departments work with it. They have to check it, they have to complete it, and then to prove you that it's done. It's just some 3 steps, but there is actually much more. I think there are dozens of steps inside, and that's one of the examples. Another one is my favorite. We worked with order picking and logistics. There is a truck. It has to be loaded with some milk and yogurts, and if it's not loaded in time, all the schedule is broken, and it will be delivered the next day, and milk is really short in terms of how much you can save it. So it costs a lot if you're not optimal when you're loading this truck. And then we see the movement of the pickers around the warehouse as a process. And we understand why they come back. What is the shortage here? What if we put double space here? If it will be enough? How can we streamline their way here? Sometimes we work with production process, like steel production or something like this. And we work with just like real process with all these machines, with all these batches of steel going from one to another to understand, okay, what is the load for these machines? What are the bottlenecks? What can we optimize here? Maybe some energy consumption or like this.
So you basically split the process into the steps, then try to measure each step and to understand it, so you would actually make the performance better.
Exactly.
Okay.
We try to collect all the data footprints and then to label them as events, as steps that we are interested in. And as soon as it's done, we can load it to process mining and see the full picture. So it can be really different events. For contract approvals, part of process that I'm involved into quite often, the step can be the status change. It's ready to sign on our side, it's ready to sign on our client's side, or it can be reassignment, for example. One lawyer reassigned it, one legal person reassigned it to another one. It can be also a step, and I would also like to see all this ping pong with reassignments to understand what happens here.
I wasn't here at the beginning, so could you explain, as coming from software development, and usually there you don't have data, you have just a process. So or in digital transformation, you also have to analyze the process, but you don't have any data. So to imagine what is the level, because if you already have the data, and how does it, because so my problem was we have to analyze the requirements, what is happening in the company, and then you don't have any data, I have just requirements.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
To put it.
I have 2 answers for that, actually. For software development, at least you have some task tracker or bug tracker, and it has some statuses, or at least we can see the creation and the closure of the tickets, and this is already the data. We can also create the data if we don't have any. We can ingest the emails, we can ingest the conversation in Slack. It's much harder in terms of security, in terms of preparation, but it's still possible. For our HR processes, we understood that we have like a blind point for 2 major steps because they're all in emails. So we added some text to emails and started to load it and parse it for data for our business steps. And there is also task mining as a technology. If I'm doing something like in Excel, then in my Outlook, then in a web browser, there is no data left. I'm not in the systems, but we can put task mining agent here, we can configure it to track particular applications, not to track my YouTube, for example, but to track my Outlook, and to collect this data. And then we can see the patterns. Thank you.
It was not clear for me in the beginning that you're talking about like business, business process management, basically. You even mentioned at some point one of the certifications about it. Doesn't really matter. It's just it was confusing to me to understand, but after I understood, your talk was amazing. I didn't even know that people was actually doing this analysis on top of all of these processes, because it makes total sense to do that. But my question was also related to the colleague. You have the processes that happens in a business, and what if you have a software that is very strict in the data that it sends to you? How do you adapt the data that is being sent to you so that you have enough data to analyze how much? You even mentioned a picking process inside of a warehouse. And the softwares, they can be very bad at giving you data. But how do you increment this data? Is there any piece of software you use or hardware where you can log some stuff? How does it happen?
I would say that we use anything that we can use here. Sometimes it's task mining, sometimes it's even video analysis. For the pickers, it can be really helpful, and it's easy to come with, because it's easy to detect where is the picker and where is the number of the part where is here. Sometimes we work close with our IoT team, Industrial Internet of Things, but it's more about some like physical processes like production, stuff like this. Of course, there are processes that we can't cover. Like when I'm doing something out of my working station, I'm bringing some papers, that is no way I can have data here. So yes, there are some blind spots. Usually we don't go to the analysis when we understand that there are less than 70% of the crucial steps covered with the data. Because we can do it, we will have some hypotheses, some ideas of improvement here, but they might be biased because we don't see a major part of this process. So yes, we're still on the road to digitize everything, but we do already have lots of opportunities. Sometimes there are really systems that are really like old-fashioned, some legacy, and no one even knows how to retrieve data from there. Then we can try to track it with task mining or with some RPA to act like a human who sees it. So at least this way. It's not perfect because we have to collect the data. We don't have the history of it, but at least it's something.
I see.
Just one more thing. You've mentioned a very important moment. There is BPM and there is process mining. And I really like the formula that process mining is BPM upside down. Yeah. Because when you are in BPM, you configure your process how it should be.
Exactly.
And when you are in process mining, it's like MRI. You're looking how it really looks. Mm-hmm.
It's the reverse engineering.
Yeah, exactly. You have the data, you have all the symptoms, and you're reverse engineering, yes, the process structure.
Because for me, it was very interesting when you said it's scalable, and I was like, ha. Because if you have all of these difficult systems in the middle that does not make available to you whatever you need and so on, that's not so. But I understand now that you explained to me the second part, how scalable it is and what in the scalability you mean.
Yeah, it becomes the question of data scalability, because the process model is retrieved automatically. You just load the data here. I want to load more the data, I load more the data here, and of course, there are some computational, maybe it's slower, or it's cloud service mostly, but at final, we have the process model, and we don't need some additional actions, we don't need to perform it to scale it, because we just load the data here.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. I think that's it.